Listeners, thank you for joining us in the third part of our series on having an abundant social life. Today we're talking about nurturing the bond, the art of maintaining meaningful friendships. What this really is in the last episode we talked about starting the friendships and getting them going. This is about taking it to the next level and how do we get better, deeper, more meaningful relationships in our life. All right, listeners, welcome back. Our next episode in our having an abundant social life. Today we're going to talk about nurturing the bond and the art of maintaining meaningful friendships. I think we're getting into a little bit today about some of the work and the effort that goes into friendship. And I like to think about this. Somebody said to me years ago, and they compared this to any relationship, whether it's a friendship or whatever, and they thought about it like a bank, taking a bank. And every time you do something good, whether you just have fun, you build trust, you show up on time, you're making a deposit in the bank.
Yep.
Right? And you need to make sure you have a positive balance in there, and you keep adding to it, right? Other people talk about it's more like tending a garden. Right? You got to plant the seeds and fertilize them and pull the weeds and do everything else. So whichever analogy you like, we're going to get into some of that hard work, whether it's making deposits or taking care of the garden. So, all right, I'm going to start you guys with a good question again.
Is this interview question too? Are we going to be nervous again like last time?
I think you definitely should be nervous.
Okay.
It's not an interview question, however. I'm stealing this. I've heard other people ask this question. This isn't my question, but I think it's a fantastic question. And imagine let's say you're traveling through, John, you said rural Kentucky earlier. You're in rural Kentucky and you get thrown in jail or in prison in Kentucky. And you got to call one person to try and get you out. Who are you calling?
First of all, why did you assume that hasn't happened to me?
I didn't assume anything.
Oh.
Why did you assume I assumed?
I don't know.
Okay. Who are you calling? Who's the person that comes to mind? So listeners, I would encourage you to do the same thing. I mean, you can insert Mexican prison. You could, John, you could talk about your friend. This could apply to any situation, right? Your mother that you talked about last episode.
Yeah, I have a friend who I did this for. So I had a friend who ended up in jail, and I got a call, and I had to go do that, and it would be the same person I'd call back. And the good news is there's 3 people I trust to do that for me.
Why?
Because I know they'd show up, because they've showed up every single time.
Okay. Anthony, any comments on this? Anything you want to add?
Why
would you call the people you would call?
Well, number one, it would be confidential. Number 2, they're connected and could make stuff happen. So depends on the state.
I have a bar card in every state. I don't have a bar card at all.
No, yeah. I have 2 or 3 people that, that are on the list. So.
Right. And you're talking some of that you're talking about right now. You're talking about they're high agency.
Yeah.
I mean, part of it is they can be there, but also you're talking about people that can get shit done. Yeah. Right. And they can make things happen. So, all right. Well, let's go into.
Do you want stories about that again?
Fire. I love stories.
Yeah, I mean, this is like so I'm very early in a relationship with my wife. We're dating at the time. We're probably 6 weeks in, and I'm at an event that I'm hosting for work. It's me and it's 2 of my clients, and 2 of my clients as significant others, and then my wife, my now wife, but girlfriend at the time. 6 weeks of dating, and I get a phone call from my sister twice in a row. And my sister does not call me twice in a row on a weeknight ever. And we've just visited over the weekend. My wife and I were at one of her friends' weddings in Dallas, about 3 hours from Austin, a car trip away. And so we haven't unpacked our bags. And my mom, who I talked about in an earlier episode, this is years later now, had passed away. And but when I got the phone call, the paramedics were in her home trying to resuscitate her. And so I excused myself from the work event. And thankfully, these were clients who knew me well enough that were incredibly, gracious. I mean, anybody would be, but they were incredibly gracious. And I walked out and said to my relatively new girlfriend, like, "Hey, I don't mean to be quick, but I'm going to be on a plane in the next hour, and I don't want to leave you high and dry, but I got to run." And she said, yeah, I know. Here's the last 2 flights on American Airlines. Flight departs in 90 minutes. Our bags are already packed, and I can have someone ship my computer to me. So you just tell me I've already put my credit card number in. Do I hit buy? And then for the next 7 days, while I'm just one of the darkest periods of my entire life, she ended up working from 6 a.m. local time until 2 p.m. local time on her job remotely after having someone overnight her computer to her that weekend, or that I guess it got there Wednesday. And then from 2 o'clock in the afternoon until about 8 o'clock local time, she organized every bit of administrative work that she could pick up that the family couldn't handle for everybody in the family, all of whom she was meeting for the very first time.
That's high agency.
Like, amazing in a crisis.
Yeah, and a lot of other things.
Yeah. So amazing in a crisis. One of the most selfless things I've ever seen somebody do. And she's not the only person in my life like that. I've got a couple of other friends who show up in that same way. And I think that's where you, like, you know, it's like that's the way that she showed up for me is the way I want to show up for my friends. Like, that was, I mean, it's a high bar to get over, but like, yeah,
All right.
yeah.
I love that. So I'm glad I said yes to the story. There we go. Well, the foundations.
Anthony's laughing at me. I want to know. Wait, hold on.
No, I just it's a very joyous. It's a very joyous story.
Okay, good. I thought maybe
made me feel great.
So let's talk about those foundations, right? Because that's a marriage is a friendship, certainly is a big part of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody hopes they marry their best friend, but what are these foundations? So let's identify what these things are. We talked about, the person you would call. We got this story. What are the things that you think are the foundations of that friendship, right? Because we want to build this on a strong foundation.
It's exactly the things we talked about earlier. Yeah. It's responsibility and accountability, so you can count on them, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's the willingness to be vulnerable and their willingness to hold that in trust, and then radical acceptance and the willingness to see someone in their best light. And I can't tell you the number of fights I haven't been in with Amber because she's been willing to give me the grace of knowing that I didn't mean the words that I said. I meant something better, but I was crappy at letting them come out of my mouth and like letting me try again. And I give her the benefit of the doubt in the same way. It's like, I know that she's always trying to do what's in my best interest or our best interest as a relationship. And because I know that if I don't receive it well, I might just check in and say, hey, that didn't land the way I think maybe you wanted it to. Can we, adjust?
So you're talking about the packaging, right? I mean, I'm definitely guilty of this. I say things and then the packaging isn't always, doesn't come across the way I intended it to come across, right? So how do you...
Yeah, this probably happens more with me talking to Amber than her talking to me, candidly. But, the part where I used to get into a lot of trouble younger that I probably get into less trouble now, not no trouble, just less trouble, is processing my feelings in the moment out loud verbally with somebody. I just haven't found that to be super effective for relationships for me personally. And so what I have to do is kind of like process them and then bring them back. And that's not about like not being myself. That's about like, as a human, when you have a feeling, it's not somebody else's job to do that work of processing the feeling for you, in my opinion, my professional opinion. And so while it can be helpful to process with somebody, it's more helpful when it's a thoughtful process, not just So
walk a listener through that. What works for you?
If you did something that made me angry, me telling you about it right in that moment, trying to fix it while I'm emotional, I'm not going to give you that feedback in a way that's actually helpful. And the chances are it being about you are pretty low. Like, it's probably not about you. And so letting me go back and figure that out for a minute, in almost every case, I don't even bring it up as feedback to that person because that's nothing to do with them to begin with. And it's probably a molehill that I've turned into a mountain.
Okay. Anthony, you got some wisdom here?
Oh, I was going to give you a story.
Well,
we'll come back to the story.
I'm just teasing. Anthony's more interesting anyway.
In terms of, the foundational thing that you asked, for me, it's a feeling where I have no doubt about what's going to be happening next. based on, I know the person's going to be there on time. I know it's going to be an interesting or enjoyable time. But I also think from a foundational perspective, you know you're heading in the right direction. Again, you haven't reached the destination. You're now nurturing, right? We're in the nurturing phase. When you're doing something with or for someone, and it's effortless. It's not a strain. It feels good, and most of the time, you're doing more for them than they're doing for you. But it just feels effortless, and it feels enriching and rewarding. And that's how I know I'm moving in the right direction.
I'll bet you both parties feel that same way too. Like I bet that both parties feel effortless.
Yeah.
And they probably both at times feel like I'm doing more than they are. Because we do have tendency to kind of see our own side of it more clearly.
Well, yes, that's hopefully true. And this is what you're going to find out.
Right.
Right? You're going to find out if this is real or, God, I'm going to age myself. Is it Memorex? You know, it's...
Wow.
Sorry, guys.
I remember that, unfortunately.
That's a cassette tape.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, a cassette tape is something that we used to listen to before CDs, just after 8 tracks.
Right. In any event.
Whoo.
Yeah, but it is a feeling that you have, and it's also there never is enough. You want to continue, right? You don't want it to end.
But the work comes before the like psychologists know for a fact the work comes before the feeling. Like there's you work and then the feeling shows up.
Right. Yeah. But then that's like a
it's a virtuous.
Well, it's a flywheel.
Yeah, it's a virtuous cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a flywheel.
So again, going back, you're making deposits, right? So you're making the deposits that then
and I think that there was a time in my life where I was always looking at the deposit I was making so that I could figure out what deposit I was going to get in return. And that was a transaction, a series of transactions, not relationships. So in that case, I don't think I was being good and relational. I was objectifying people. It was always quid pro quo. I give you so that I can have. I give you so that I can have. I give you so that I can have.
So both of you mentioned trust. How do you create trust, or maybe the better question is, how does somebody create trust with you? Would be a better question. Anthony, clearly you've mentioned it over not just this episode but previous. Just being on time is a big one for you.
Yeah, I mean, boy, it's such what seems like a difficult question to answer, but it's actually easy. You know it when you see it. You know trust when you see it.
Yeah.
It's there. It is black and white. There are signals. Now, the human condition is we'll deny and give the second and third and fourth chance to someone because that's who we are. That's the human condition. But you know it when you see it. And that's, again, we're going to end up talking about, how do you exit a relationship at some point. But for me, that's kind of the non-starter. A mistake is one thing. Breaking a trust is something entirely different. Now, it can be accidental and you can forgive it. But generally speaking, if it presents itself a second time, it's pretty hard to come back from that.
And trust is a couple different things. Like, it's like there's the trust of holding a confidence where you tell somebody's story or secret when you shouldn't. And that's one type of breaking trust. There's another part of trust, which is about someone's competency and how you make them feel when you're around them. And so I joke with people all the time, like, you guys both know me really well, but neither one of you trust me to do brain surgery because I don't have that skill set. I'm not a brain surgeon. Right? But there are places where we have really high trust. right? And so I think trust is, I don't mean situational in a different way, but like you would trust me to probably help you if you went to the hospital and needed to find a great brain surgeon. You know that I've got a healthcare network and that I'm going to be very committed to helping you find the right person for that. And you might trust me implicitly for that help, but you would not want me being the one with the drill and the scalpel.
But I also trust you that you wouldn't try to be the brain surgeon.
100%. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think that's part of it too.
That's a piece of it, but there's another piece of it too that we I don't want to skate over, which is how people feel when they're around you. Like I've had feedback from both of you and from other people in my life that there are times that I talk to people in a way that doesn't feel good for people. And there's a number of ways that I can show up that way that's not awesome or helpful. And I'm aware of that. And I work to improve that, but that's a part of the way that I communicate. And so I've got to be thoughtful about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think you and I have that in common at times, right? I mean, both of us are sometimes like get to the point and, and super blunt, right?
Well,
and impatient might be another word.
And well, yeah, that's probably true for me. And there's probably a much longer list that I have to navigate myself through more than you do. But like, if I want someone to feel good when I'm around, then I need to make the environment about them, not about me. It's not about how easy the environment can be for me. It's about how well I can show up for them. And so for me, I try to be mindful and thoughtful. And it sounds like it takes a lot of work, but for me, it doesn't anymore. Like when I started practicing this empathy, it was very high energy. But after practicing for a couple of weeks, it became much easier. And that's just, am I just paying attention to what's good for the other person? Like, am I actually giving a shit about their experience? Right? And what that turned into was, it's just not that important for me to point out all the things I used to point out. Just not that important. And so I don't.
Okay. So before we put the bow on trust, what about just, again, we talked about reliability, being on time. Are they reliable? Are they doing what they say? What about confidentiality? Let's dig into that a little bit, right? Because I think we've probably all had examples in our lives where people have broken trust because they couldn't keep their mouth shut, or they, probably in a lot of cases non-intentional. But let's dig into confidentiality a little bit.
You want to start there?
It's a killer for me. It really is. To me, if you're explicit, it's incumbent on you to be explicit that, look, I don't want you to share this with anybody. I don't want you to share it with your wife, your dad. This is between you and I, okay, and only you and I. And I think of the 5 that I have, and never once did anything that we didn't want the other to know, someone else to know about, either direction. We're part of a group, and everything we talk about in our group is confidential. And my wife is still mad at me.
Mine too.
That I won't tell her what we talk about. Again, you know it when you see it, right?
Yeah.
You know, when someone breaks a confidence, you know it. There's no doubt about it. And to me, it's kind of, it's, I can't think of a time when something of significance happened that someone came back from it.
Does your wife say to you, well, if you can't tell me, who can you tell? Or like you should be able to tell me everything?
Are you talking about me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Can we cut, Ryan, can we cut that out of this?
All right. So, I think that pretty well does confidentiality. Let's go into acceptance.
Well, hold on. There's a flip side to what we talked about trust. And it's not about the confidentiality. It's about the feeling part. And maybe if we're going to acceptance, maybe this is it. But I've got a buddy one of my close ones, who he will always find the best way to see everyone and tell everyone how he sees it. And it feels awesome because you always know he's looking at you in your best light.
Yeah.
So maybe actually I'm not about trust and confidence. That's the seeing you in your best light part. So sorry, I'm skipping around.
It's all right. No, it's a good point, right? I think a lot of that's, I think of that as grace, right? Do you give people grace?
Yeah.
Is the way I tend to think of that. So, and I think that goes with acceptance.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's been easy for the three of us in this room. I don't know that acceptance is something that came supernatural to any of the 3 of us.
Did not for me.
Yeah. So Well,
Do you know what that
let's
is? Acceptance.
Let's rip the Band-Aid off that one, since this is the tough one.
Well, accepting that it's falling apart.
Well, I think accepting people for who they are, seeing kind of what John's having grace, seeing them in their best light is different, but parallel paths.
Yeah, it
right?
comes. I mean, it comes with maturity. It really does. I think you're not really conscious of it when you're young. You're very opinionated. You're not smooth. You're more apt to. At least I was more apt to go from thought to voice without doing a lot of thinking in between, and then you're not really listening. You're not really listening to what's being said. You're not really digesting it in its entirety and giving the person or the group a lot of times the attention that they deserve and the opportunity to fully explain the position and so forth. So, and you're ready to move on too. You're at a faster pace the younger you are. Okay, the next.
Well, it's funny what a big disadvantage that puts somebody at too. I had a conversation this week with somebody about acceptance, and they wanted the world to be a way that it wasn't. Yeah. And when you're navigating the world the way that it's not, you're not navigating the road as it is, and that's a great way to drive off the road, right? And so, like, finally, we just had the part of the conversation where I said, "Hey, look, I hear that's the way you want so and so to see the world. That's not the way so and so sees the world. They're not going to see the world that way." And so we can spend as much time as you want hoping for that. And I can tell you right now, it's not going to happen. So we can either work on the things you can control, or you can keep trying to change somebody else, which you're never going to be able to do.
Right.
Yeah. For me, this comes down to motivations, belief systems, and it takes effort and work to really think about, like, what is that person? And I guess that's empathy in a way, but what, because a lot of times I think we view men especially, probably more than women, but women do it too, is we view, here's the outcome I would want, and here's what I would want, and here's what I value, and here's what I believe. And if that
that's
person,
people, Randy. That's not,
yeah,
that's not
but
women less than men.
I think, but that's what we do, right? And for me, if I can stop and think, what does blank, fill in the blank, what does John want, or what does Anthony want, and what's important to them, what do they believe, what do they value,
or better yet, what have they told me they believe?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we ask ourselves, what does Randy want, and we then project what we want Randy to want onto Randy. Yeah. That is not helpful. So
right.
So it just that one little piece of language change is, what has Randy told me he wants?
Yeah, I think it's a saying I think I heard this from you actually, John, is am I giving somebody the gift they want, or am I giving the gift I want, or the gift they want?
Yeah.
So, okay.
And the packaging matters, right? Like we talked about packaging. Like I tell the story all the time, and this is not a true story, it's a fictional story. But if my wife and daughter both wanted the same gift for Christmas, and if it was true that my wife didn't want it gift wrapped and my daughter did want it gift wrapped, and I gave them both the same gift, but I gave them the opposite one, both would be unhappy. Because one of them wanted the gift wrapped, and one of them didn't want me to waste paper, and so the packaging can screw up the gift.
So, definitely so. So, talked about that in a relationship though, with friends. I mean, put that into a more something somebody can use.
Yeah, it's like if I'm trying to think about it like a real example where this has actually happened, but like if somebody really values going to concerts, and you're like, hey, I know you love going to concerts, so I bought you tickets to the baseball game because that's where we're going. Like that, like
right,
like that's maybe not awesome, right?
Got it. All right. Feedback. Let's talk about feedback, right? So this is a little bit of a tricky one, I think. Giving feedback, receiving feedback, this takes a lot of trust. We've been talking about trust. If we have trust, right, we're able, I mean, I think that's a foundation we need, but let's talk about giving feedback. How do you give
so
feedback?
I'm gonna ask if we can pivot here for half a second, because
Okay.
so for the listeners, we have these show notes we create that we go through, and this section I put giving feedback and then receiving feedback, and I just recognize I shouldn't have done that. I should have put receiving feedback first and then giving feedback, because my guidance to myself first and then everybody else would be that until you're good at receiving feedback, as evidenced by your friends telling you that you're good at receiving feedback, you shouldn't be giving feedback.
Okay.
Like I think that's like that's step one, is like receiving
Okay.
feedback should be step one, because if you're not receiving
Right.
feedback in a way that your friends are like, wow, that was a great way to receive feedback, then you probably shouldn't be giving feedback.
Okay. So let's talk about receiving feedback.
Yeah.
Right. What does that look like? Or, well, why? Why is that important? Let's go a little more into the why. I mean, you just kind of hit on it, but let's go deeper there.
I mean, I don't think you can help people have, you can't give people what they're asking for in a relationship unless you're able to receive what they're sharing with you. And so there's two types of feedback. Like there's feedback I could give you in a relationship, Randy, where I'm talking about what I need from you in a relationship. And there's feedback I can give you based on just things that I think may be in your best interest where you can't see yourself. And so I'm going to geek out on academic stuff for a second, but there's two psychologists that created something called the Johari window. And it was like this little 2x2 box. We'll put a thing on the website for it. And the Johari window is like, there's things about me that we both know. There's things about me that only I know and that I don't share with you, and those are hidden. There's things you see about me that I can't see myself. Those are my blind spots. And then there's the things that neither one of us know about me, that it's just the unknown, right?
Okay.
And so where I have a blind spot, if you're a good friend, you can help me with those blind spots if I'm open to it. And in a perfect world, there's a huge level of things that we both know about me. And then the things that I know about myself that I hide from you and my blind spots, we shrink those boxes and push them into the box where we both know those about me. And that's how you have great connected relationship, right? And so if I'm not willing to receive feedback from you, then that blind spot box is big. And so the way that played out in my life was that, I was doing a 360 with a counselor where they were evaluating me, and I had them talk to a bunch of people that worked with me, for me, peers, superiors, subordinates. And one of the things that came out of it was that I was so positive and Pollyanna that I would say things that just everyone knew to be untrue. I was hoping they might be true because I was trying to be the rah leader, and I'd leave the room and they would laugh at me behind my back, and I was the butt of the joke and didn't know it and thought I was being a great leader versus being a trusted leader who was, really kind of seeing things as they were and helping people navigate. Instead, I was losing their confidence. And I was like, son of a bitch. Like, I really cared about you and was trying to lead you. And one of the people in the 360 had the courtesy and the courage to call me and say, hey, look, I want you to know what I told your counselor, and here's why I told it to them. And we've maintained a great friendship since then. Like, I have a huge amount of respect for this person who really went on a limb. And the only benefit of going that limb was for my growth. Like, there was no upside to them telling me that, like none. All they had was risk. And I'll be forever grateful they came to me and gave me that feedback. And so I think if you're not willing to receive that feedback, I would be the same guy I was, 20 years ago, still doing the same stuff and being just as ineffective as I was at that point, and, to my own detriment.
So I know both of you well enough to know both of you are willing to take feedback. A lot of people aren't. Right? So, I mean, probably
Bummer.
including the three of us at different times in our lives, right? I mean, it's not always easy. So let's talk about why that is. Why don't people take feedback, whether it was us or either what we've seen in ourselves or what we've seen in somebody else to get to that point?
Well, in the context of what we're talking about in terms of nurturing a relationship, it's, receiving feedback from someone that you really are just getting to know. They in your mind haven't earned the right, or they don't have the agency to be giving this feedback, and maybe their feedback is garbage, right? It's just garbage feedback. It's feedback
Right.
about your political or your some sort of today's health fad or whatever the case might be. So you're not buying it, they don't, then later on, maybe you find out this person really had, an education in that area, and suddenly your mind might change. So it's contextual around who it is, when it is, and which stage you're at. Whoever your 5 are, if they're going to give you feedback, you're listening. You're not even questioning it.
Yeah.
In fact, you're listening, and then you're executing against that feedback. You're just doing it, right? And it's a completely different environment. These are the most trusted people in your life. Whatever they say, I'm taking that feedback.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm moving on. Someone I just met, or I'm at the second coffee, and they're giving me feedback that I shouldn't have cream in my coffee because cream is pasteurized and it's going to kill me. Blah blah. I'm going to take it differently. So it's all contextual. But I don't agree that most people can't take feedback. I would agree that most people don't like feedback, even from one of the 5. No one likes to hear, something that's off-putting to them. But again, as you mature, it's easier to take it, and it's easier to contextualize it, and then turn it around to giving feedback on the feedback you just got. Because what you want from the feedback is you want to circle it around and make it a circular discussion. Tell me more about that. Tell me why you feel that way. How do you think I should adjust to this feedback? Over what time period do you think I could do that? And have a meaningful discussion about it. So, and it isn't just turn around and now start giving them feedback. It's give them feedback on your feedback to keep this cycle going.
I think that's really good, right? Because what a lot of us do is we get defensive. Somebody says it, and you're like, well, but, or, well, you do it too, right? Or the what about isms, all that different stuff. So not. I think there's lots of gold in there.
Well, all that's about, the defensive-ness is about an emotional reaction in almost every part, right? So at some point, you've kind of left the cerebral cortex, you've headed into your limbic system, and now now you're probably reacting to something that isn't the feedback, right? And so that's and look, I think my experience is even when people get good at receiving feedback, it's still hard and imperfect. And so, so one of the things that I find for people who are trying to be better at receiving feedback is learn about paraphrasing and active listening, where when someone gives feedback, it's like, okay, let me tell you what I think I heard you say. Right? Because it's like, I really deeply want, I don't want to understand the next step or the third step or the fourth step. I just want to make sure I understand. I think I just heard you say this about the feedback. Do I understand you correctly? And then sometimes that might be a place to take a break early on in receiving feedback, where it's like, okay, I just need to sit with that.
Yeah.
I often tell the story where I got feedback professionally from my boss's boss, and I was, 30-ish years old, and I had a remarkably successful career, meteoric rise, and the feedback he gave me was that if you don't change the way that you're relating to people right now, you will not be promoted again, not just in our company, but your career is at a standstill. You'll never go further than this. And I could not, I had 150 people that worked for me that would have taken a bullet for me that day, in my mind. And I think that there was some truth to that. I'd done a lot of great things, but as I really sat with that for the next 6 months, I remember calling him back and saying, hey, that thing you told me, I can see it now. But it took me 6 months to be able to see it.
Yeah. Wow. 6 months. And you sat with it. That's pretty good.
I was pretty hard-headed.
No, the fact that, you could look at it that way, but the fact that you were willing to sit and think about it, it obviously impacted you, and you took it seriously. You didn't like the answer or the feedback, but you were also self-aware enough that you started, at least it made you aware.
Well, I knew he truly was having the conversation because he cared about me, because, again, he was trying to help me develop my career to where I told him I wanted it to go, and so there was no upside to him for upsetting me.
Yeah.
Right. The upside for him was he committed to developing me, and I committed to being developed by him. And it was, at that point we'd been working together for 7 years, and, there was a very high trust relationship. And professionally, he really was trying to help,
okay.
so I think that,
Yeah, I think the harder one is sometimes we get good feedback from people that we don't respect or we don't like.
Yeah.
Right. And, I think of early in my business career, my region manager was in and he was watching an interview, and I'd always been really good at this part of the business, but I was struggling for some reason. I didn't know why. And this smart ass kid was really inappropriate and gave feedback unsolicited. And, my initial reaction was like, well, who is he? I'm blah, 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 and kind of stuck my chest out. And Marty, my region manager, made a comment. He goes, that kid, he's an asshole, and he's a jackass, but he may not be wrong. I was like, oh, right. And so, like you said, I sat with that and I realized, oh, the kid probably isn't wrong.
So packaging does matter?
Well, no, he had terrible packaging.
Yeah, that's what I mean, though. Yeah.
But the fact is, Marty made me think
that's
about
what I
it.
mean. Marty's packaging.
That's
yeah.
yes.
Marty took the gift.
Yeah.
Marty repackaged it for you.
Yeah.
And made it palatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to sit with it for 6 months, I guess, but it was.
You're smarter than I am.
Well, clearly. I mean, listeners have already figured that out, John.
I know.
I
know. I can compensate.
All right. So let's go back to giving feedback. All right. Let's go around. So what is, like, we want to be honest, and we want to package it. We want to be kind.
Ooh, let's go back to honest for a second. Hold on. I was going through with a spiritual director one time, and she said to me, John, just because you honestly have a feeling or an opinion doesn't give you a blank check to share it. I was like, oh, damn. So people don't, sometimes they mistake what honesty is. And so I think honest in this particular case, I think we have to slice that a little thinner and say, like, we know that we're not projecting. Like, we've done enough work on the inside to know, like, hey, this feedback is really about me trying to help Randy, not about me fixing Randy for my benefit.
We're assuming a high level of self-awareness here, but continue.
Well, but I think maybe people shouldn't be given feedback until they can receive feedback. And I know that's not really the way the world works. I know we're not. It's a high bar.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just commenting most people don't have this level of self-awareness. So
hopefully
this podcast can make people aware of that.
And when it comes to abundance, we should be, if we're going to build abundance, we should know we don't have to give feedback for our own benefit. We can give feedback for the benefit of the other person and really put them at the center of those comments. And if we're not 100% sure that that person is at the center of those comments, maybe it's just not worth it.
I think that's fantastic advice. So we are assuming that our listener is going to be self-aware, and they are going to give honest feedback for the benefit of the person.
Without projection, which is the hard part, because a lot of times we don't know we're projecting.
Yeah, it's a lot right there.
Look, when we teach this when I work with clients and we talk about feedback, we talk about specific feedback versus characterized feedback, or specific versus unspecific. And so specific would be talking about a very specific set of actions and then sharing the impact of those actions as feedback, versus characterizing it in a way that's not actually useful to moving somebody forward. And so, like, hey, Randy, hey, John, when you wrote the notes today and you put giving feedback before receiving feedback, that may actually give people the wrong idea as we go through the podcast. And so the feedback would be, should we change? And it's like, oh, okay, God, like, that's specific, actionable feedback, versus, hey, John, you weren't very thoughtful when you put the notes together today. It's like, well, how do I fix that? So I think honest feedback, I think maybe I would say, whenever possible, give specific feedback, even when you're giving positive feedback. Because, hey, you're awesome isn't as great as, hey, man, when you called me the other day and said da-da-da-da, that was really meaningful for me. And I got to tell you, it changed the course of my day. And I'm really grateful, and I appreciate that. That's so much more powerful than, hey, Randy, you're awesome, man.
I like that you just put a spin on that. It could be positive feedback.
I think,
because I think we've been approaching this more from negative feedback or fixing problems. So
statistic time. Healthy relationships have 20 times more positive feedback than negative feedback. Unhealthy relationships have 5 times more positive feedback than negative feedback. I'll say it again. Unhealthy relationships have, or relationships in conflict is probably better said, have 5 times more positive feedback than negative feedback when they're not going well. When I learned those stats and learned that most of the people I was giving feedback, 5-to-1 negative, I realized I might have been the a-hole. And by might have been, I mean was.
Yeah.
I think it's important to, before giving feedback, is to get permission to give the feedback. Just blurting out feedback for the sake of telling someone, even if it's in their best interest, it may or may not get through. But if you have the dialogue of, hey, would you mind if I gave you some feedback on your backswing? If you don't want it, if you don't like, because I see something, would you like it? And that's a relevant thing, right? In athletics, some people just leave me alone. But the same thing in a marriage or in a business relationship or personal relationship. Can I give you some feedback on that? And if they say sure, then they've opened the door and off you go. And again, if you apply the rules of you're doing it for that person in their best interest, you have a chance of it being well received.
Yeah.
If you just blurt it out, your chances of having it received go down by, I don't know, you probably have a statistic on it, John, because you have a statistic on every damn thing.
67.352% of all statistics are made up on the spot.
Right. So, but anyway, I think that's the most important piece of it.
Yeah, I think that's wise.
And then just being calm about it and not being urgent. You better stop eating that. It just doesn't. The more urgency and anxiety you put through and directing feedback to someone, I think the less they're going to accept it.
Specificity is really the key.
Yeah.
And you know what? Here's what I'd offer to the listener. There's a great way to practice this. Go give only positive feedback for a long time. And if you give positive feedback 100 or 1,000 times, it's a great way to learn how to give feedback. Because I'm like, hey, Randy, can I give you some feedback?
Yeah.
The other day when you did something positive, and I go through the positive feedback, then you're not going to have a negative reaction the next time I say, hey, Randy, can I give you some feedback?
Yeah. That's great.
I heard an executive my wife worked with, she always called it feed forward. So it was like, hey, for the next time, which I thought was really a cool way of looking at it. Feed forward. Like, here for next time. But that way there was like less pressure on like, hey, you made a mistake. It was more like, hey, here's how to make it better, which I really appreciated that particular feedback.
Well, it plays to the idea that you want to play to somebody's strength anyway.
Yeah.
You're really not, especially in business, if someone has a weakness, it's really hard to convert that weakness. You want to minimize that weakness, of course, but you're not going to turn that weakness into a strength 99 times out of 100. So it doesn't do you much good anyway to give that kind of feedback on what they're doing well and leveraging up that. It's like a good stock. It's going good, keep it going. Feed your horses, as they say. So.
I think that's a great point, right? I know I've been guilty of this. I've watched other people in a business setting, especially. They take somebody that doesn't have a certain skill set, and instead of putting that person in a position to succeed, they're trying to fix them to do this thing they're not good at, right?
Well,
I mean, we've
that's
all
natural.
seen it.
We've done it. We made that mistake. Every one of us has made that mistake with ourselves, trying to get good at something we're not good at.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, I gotta, I'm really not a great, with spreadsheets. So I'm going to spend the next 6 months teaching myself these Excel formulas and blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't change. 6 months later, I'm just more frustrated than I was 6 months ago. Whereas I could have spent 6 months doing some, relationship marketing and doubled the sales.
Well, and I love the kind of motivational speaker type stuff and people like, you can do anything. But the reality is I also want to be honest about like, I'm not 7 feet tall and I don't play basketball well. And so me being a professional center of the Los Angeles Lakers in the starting lineup is never going to happen, no matter how bad I hope it, wish it, want it, whatever. And so I think you have to balance optimism with acceptance. That's really, really important.
All right. I got a bunch of really good nuggets from this, and let's go to break on that. When we come back, we're going to go into just going deeper and getting beyond the surface level in connection. So we'll discuss that when we get back from the break. All right, listeners, welcome back. We are going to go a little deeper on developing these friendships. And
pun intended. I see what you did there.
There we go.
I saw what you did.
Beyond the surface level. So let's.
By the way, that's an example of positive feedback. I just wanted to point out that I just did that naturally. Didn't even mean to, but no one gave me feedback and good feedback, so I want to give it to myself.
Amazing.
I'm welcome.
Amazing. Can John take your own? Do this.
Yeah, here we go.
There
Hey, look at that.
All right. So let's talk about the difference. I think everybody wants more of these people in the 5, right? The people that we can really count on. And one of the things that I think separates them are these are people that you feel comfortable really talking about your shit with, right? Like being vulnerable, talking about your issues, asking for help. That I think a lot of times the acquaintances were not going to have those conversations. So let's talk about the vulnerability. Why is that important? How does that help create the deep bonds?
I think it's what's real. Like, I think that, to be vulnerable, you've got to be self-aware. Right. And then I think that's when you're in it, and you remember in the first episode, hey there, look at that. Really in it. When the first episode, we talked about the 7 layers, right, of intimacy, as Kelly talked about them in the book, the 7 levels of intimacy, and that romantic relationships, but it really plays to personal friendships as well, where you have like you've got up the cliche and then facts and then opinions, right? Then hopes and goals and dreams. Then you get into like feelings. Then you get into like fears, faults, and failures. Like to be able to talk to somebody about your fears, faults, and failures, like Anthony, I don't know about you or Anthony about you, but like I don't just like come out and talk to like my friends who aren't in my 5 about my fears, faults, and failures. Like that's my I don't talk about it often. When I do, it's a pretty serious conversation that I'm looking for something. And so that's a level that's reserved for like very few people, very infrequently, and I don't think it has to be more frequently than that. But it's not a like I don't think that's a like, hi, my name is John. Yeah. My biggest weakness is when I failed at the. Yeah.
I feel like this is a place Anthony's got some of this Anthony wisdom here.
Well, it to John's point, this isn't happening early in the nurturing process at a deep level, but it is there is time where you're can show your modesty about something that you don't know. You can, I really don't understand that subject. Tell me more about that, or tell me more about why you feel, educate me on that. So it's starting to like, it's like a hard-boiled egg. You crack it, now you just start tortuously peeling off the shell, that little nick at a time, and never comes off like you want it. So that's where you start testing
I was going to make a joke. Have you tried vinegar in the water?
Yes, I have.
I'm just kidding. I was joking. I have no idea if it works. I was just trying to be a smart ass.
Yeah, he's just another John dad joke. It just doesn't, it goes over like a lead balloon.
I find it hysterical.
But this is where you start to get the feel of things with a person. How do they react to your vulnerability or your modesty is what I would call it. And do they open up to you? How do they open up to you? Is it a give and take? And it doesn't mean that I tell you something and then you immediately tell me something. Somewhere down the road, you're starting to pick up these pieces, and you're getting, by sharing your weaknesses, you're getting closer, right? And you used the term earlier at the break. What do you need? You're actually asking for help. You're back to the feedback. You're asking for the feedback. You're asking for the input because you're exposed. So no, you don't tell them about your deepest, darkest fears, but you start to have these conversations, and when they start to become reciprocal and meaningful, the relationship's gonna, again, now we're nurturing. We're in that place where we're heading in the right direction, and who knows where it's gonna end up. But it's moved a little bit forward at this point. So.
Yeah, you mentioned trust in there, and I think we've talked a lot about trust, but this only happens when that trust is there. And you have to trust them. They got in. It adds to that level of trust, right? The confidentiality, all of that, all that foundation has to be there. And then when you do this, I think it really deepens, because that it's almost like it's, even if it's not meant as a test, it acts as a test that person gets to prove that they are trustworthy and they can keep it confidential and they can be relied upon.
Yeah, remember, at least not everything is that serious. You know, this is just an acquaintance. This is a burgeoning friendship. It could, again, use, you know, we're talking about the curriculum at the elementary school and what are our views on it. And it's not the end of the world. Or we're talking about, you know, the condition of the golf course and what we could do if we join the men's golf association. If we were on the board, we would do these things. So it's not everything is, you know, all personal, and it can be just stuff, you know, just the relationship is.
Well, there's a lesson about this. One of my kids shared with one of our neighbors one of my wife's preferences that quickly could have been mistaken for a political preference, right, to one of our neighbors. And it was so flippantly done that I had to gently and appropriately correct my child that, like, hey, that's not, we don't share that information in that way, because it's that was told to you in confidence in a situation at home where you don't, like, we don't talk about that with our neighbors in that way, because it could be misconstrued and lead to disharmony in our neighbor. And so it was like teaching him how to build that trust, even in the most kind of inane of topics, right? But like, you don't just, like, you know, share those private conversations. Right. And he wasn't in trouble for it. It wasn't like I was mad, but it was like I recognized we didn't, like, there was a learning moment there.
Right.
My kids hate learning moments.
Oh boy, they get dad jokes and learning moments. How fantastic.
Somebody else took deep thoughts already. I'd have taken that one.
There we go. So Anthony, you hit on the needs. Let's talk. I don't think we're done with the going deeper, but since you hit on the needs, let's go there quickly.
Needs are deeper. That's the deepest level when you get to like your deepest legitimate needs. So,
but we talked about giving feedback, and I look at needs almost as the flip side of that coin, right? Is that being able to communicate with people, what do you need in the relationship is a big part of it, and part of going deeper, right? Is tell people instead of making them guess. I mean, John, tell me a story, or just give me your guys' feedback. I'm joking.
No,
I'm giving you feedback.
I don't know that I've ever come out to someone who's like here, like, now for my wife, I've said, like, hey, here's what I need from you. In moments, like, you know, kids are, you know, putting me to the test, and I'm like, hey, here's what I need for you to support me. But with my friends, I don't recall ever being like, here's what I need.
You know, it's funny. I usually start the conversation with my 5 closer friends by saying, hey man, I don't need anything. I just wanted to talk, you know, because sometimes you do need something, and you don't want to, I always want to make sure that if I do need something, it's very infrequently. So I always usually start a conversation with, hey, don't worry, I don't need anything. I'm good. I just want to check in with you to see if you needed anything. And that gets the ball rolling.
Yeah. You know what, though? I do, the way it shows up for me, I'm just thinking through this, like, the way it shows up for me is like, hey, I could use a sounding board. And asking someone to be a sounding board as a need generally feels good to people, because it's like, oh, cool. Like, so I think that, you know, that's a way that I would encourage people to really lean in and ask for people to be a sounding board in areas where they're going to be helpful, where you actually want them to be a sounding board. You can't be disingenuous about it. But like, I'm thinking of like my close circles. Like when I call them, it's like, hey, I'm thinking through something. I'd like to get your take on it. And I think that I certainly appreciate it because I really want their take. And almost every time, I can't think of a time I haven't had feedback that was really thoughtful.
I think that's great. And I was thinking about something really similar. Is sometimes, like, I have one friend in particular that I'm the only person he can call to vent, right? And it used to be, by the way, when he would call and he would start venting, I would start trying to solve problems.
Oh yeah.
Right? Because it seemed to me that's what he was asking. He's like, well, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, do this. And he'd be like, I'm just trying to vent. So, I've kind of trained him over the years to be like, look, when you just are calling to vent, can you just lead with that? And I'll sit there and listen however long you need me to listen. I'll just sit there and listen.
You know what's ironic about that?
What?
I called you the other day.
Yeah.
Remember that call?
No.
Oh, I called you. I had a quick question and you needed to vent.
Oh, okay.
And the topic doesn't matter because it's unimportant, but like, it was like, that was a moment. And you've given me feedback that I could be a better listener for you sometimes.
Yeah.
Like you've said that to me. And I think it's great that you were able to tell me like, hey, John, sometimes I need you to show up differently as a better listener, which I'm generally a pretty good listener. So to get that feedback from a close friend, I'm like, shit, I better really pay attention. And so I called you this day because I had a quick question. And I think about 45 minutes in, I was like, you're like, hey, why'd you call? I was like, dude, it doesn't matter. Like I called for a 1 minute thing.
I think I know. I think you're going to talk about,
But it's like, I didn't, and by the way, that wasn't off-putting for me. Like that was an opportunity for me. Like I really took that as a, like, Randy asked me to be a better listener. I got this great opportunity. And so it was for me, it was a cool moment because it was a chance for me to lean into the feedback you'd given me directly with you.
I'm just thinking I'm better at this in a business setting. Like sometimes people could be somebody that an employee or something. It's like, look, here's what I need from you.
Yeah.
And, I think about it, it's just really powerful, right? Because it creates clarity and people know, here's how I can be successful.
Yeah, I want to draw a bright line, though. I just want to draw a bright line for the listener, though. A need from like an accountability perspective in terms of I'm your boss, here's the job, that is really different than a relationship need that at the seventh layer of intimacy would not be appropriate for an employee and a boss to talk about. So because we're using the same word. So I just want to make sure it's really crystal clear for the listener. Like we're talking about different things.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do think there's opportunity here that I think I've gotten better at, and I think I probably still suck at because I could do it a lot more. That if you tell people what you need from them, you're a lot more likely to get it, right? If you just ask for it. And because they probably don't know.
Yeah, that's separate and apart from vulnerability if you're talking about a business need. But yes.
But it could be, look, it could be with your friend. It could be with your wife. It could be with whoever.
Could be you telling me you need me to be a better listener. I mean, that's true.
Well, it's trickier in the reverse, meaning most people don't say, hey, I need this, right? So so forget about your need. I would suggest to anybody, if you have an explicit need, go after it. Be explicit about it and ask for help, okay, to get that need, and you use whatever words you want. The trick is listening to what people are saying to you and interpreting what they're saying as a need. They're not saying, hey, I need you to do this for me. They're talking to you. They're telling you a story. Where you're on some subject, and hidden under there is a need. And by if you really try to nurture a relationship or you've advanced the relationship, you got to pay attention and dig a little bit and ask probing questions and give a shit, right? That's what people want. I want you to give a shit about me, and I'm going to give a shit about you. I teach everybody that works for me that I am here to help you achieve your goals. It's not about my goals. It's about your goals. I will do whatever I have to do to help you get to where you're going. Along the way, you're going to have a role to play here, and there are going to be expectations and so forth. But ultimately, if you want to be, you're in the construction business right now and you want to be a nurse, let's figure it out. We'll figure out how to get you the money, the hours, the time to become a nurse. No problem. But while you're here, here's what we need from you on the job. Conversely, I'm listening. I hear you want to be a nurse. I'm going to do things. I'm going to do what I have to do to help you achieve that end. So, I've told the story 1,000 times about the LA call center where we were losing these terrific people 8 months, 9 months after we trained them, and they were great in the call center. They were awesome. And we found out that they were leaving because they were going to nursing school and their hours changed, their curriculum changed, their residency changed. And as being great businessmen, we wouldn't let them change their hours. We tell them, no, you got to be here 7 to 4 every day. Or we were losing great people because school hours changed, or the husband changed his job and no longer can take the kid to the bus stop in the morning. We wouldn't change the hour. So we started just letting people set their own schedules. You know what it did to response times and call times and all that? Nothing. Not a damn thing. It was like, it was ridiculous. So we ended up graduating 60 or 70 nurses from nursing school. Single moms now could stick around and not turn over. We took turnover down from, God only knows what it was. It was over 100% turnover in that call center in LA, down into the 30s and 40s, which is ridiculously low for a call center. Just by saying, forget it. The schedule doesn't matter. You guys set your own schedule. Just give us a month notice and we'll make it work.
The wisdom there, though, wasn't what you said. It was that you listened and figured out the problem.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly the point.
You listened to their needs.
But for 10 years, I didn't pay a bit of attention to anybody. It was happening in front of my face for 10 years. And it finally like, okay, now I get it. I mean, an epiphany. That changed my life, actually.
But that's a huge part of acceptance, right? Like we go back, like accepting the situation for what it is versus hoping it was something else. And that's the difference between trying to solve your problem and trying to solve their problem.
Right.
Like, and if the listener was to take away nothing from this episode other than that, it's like, give a shit about their problem.
Right.
Give a shit about, or not their problem. Just care about them. Like, just care about, right? Like that's.
You guys have heard me say at the end of every Grateful Dead concert that I've been to, the millions of them, it feels like, they always end the show by saying, be kind.
Yeah.
Just a soft, be kind.
Yeah.
And you never hear about riots at shows like this. Just be kind. That was our fifth value in our last company.
Yeah.
So.
All right. I think that wisdom's great for the needs, communicating the needs. I think that wraps that up nicely. I do want to circle back real quickly. One thought I had when we were talking about being vulnerable, and we were talking about it with the 5. I think we probably should make it really clear. You don't want to be the person that wants to be super vulnerable and dump all your problems on people that you don't have that deep relationship, right?
And mix it around with the 5 too, right? Like you want people to carry that load and yeah.
Yeah, you don't don't be the whiner. That's not the person that's always complaining and whining in high maintenance is not the way to build friendships over time, right? You kind of have to earn
my goal is to be a net giver.
Yeah. Yeah. That's you know what? That puts a perfect bow on that too. Let's move to more fun. Let's move to fun and joy. So, this is, the best part of friendships, right? Is having fun, playing, joy. That's where, it needs to be a good experience for people. So how do you have fun with your friends? How do you inject joy?
It's a tough one if I'm with my friends, I don't care what we're doing. Like I could literally have fun with my friends doing almost anything. And you'll laugh at this because it's in your world. My tight group, we go on a trip once a year, generally in the mountains, and whatever we do during the day, we play poker at night for like a $10 or $20 buy-in, which in your world is like not even playing for money. And so sometimes what I'll do in these games is we play 7-card stud. That's the cards down the river, all that. Yeah, okay, that's how much I know. And I'll leave my hand down, I won't look at it, and I'll keep betting. And I have a friend who got a full house, and I didn't look the whole time, and I had 4 of a kind. And so when I flipped my hand over, we were videotaping the whole thing because we knew he had a full house. And it was like, it was madness. And we still laugh about that today. Like a no look, 4 of a kind. And it was just, it's the stupidest stuff.
Okay. So I think that's great, right? You're right. If you're with the right people, it almost doesn't matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
Just hanging around and talking.
And I wanted to prove to you how little I know about poker.
Doesn't take a lot of talent if you get 4 of a kind. I mean,
I didn't know what I had.
It's an easy.
But the fact
game.
that I was betting and didn't know what I had does not make me the brightest player on the planet.
Yeah. Let's be honest. It's $10 or $20. It's not going to have a measurable impact on your life, John.
Yeah. Well, it had a measurable impact that night. It was funny as hell.
Anthony, what do you do to add fun or joy?
Well, I in terms of what to do, it depends on where you are in your life cycle. So the earlier on as when you're single or you're not necessarily locked up with kids and so forth, you're trying to find group things where you're increasing your odds of developing tighter relationships with people. So in your case, it was sports. Music is a great thing. The health club, whatever those things are that you want to make sure you're doing something you like to do, not necessarily that you're good at, but you want to be in an environment where you're increasing your odds, right? Playing the odds. As you get on, now you're into the family phases and so forth. You've got to pick and choose carefully because you don't have the open runway to take this exit and that exit. You got 4 hours on a Saturday. You got to make a decision on what that's going to be and who it's going to be with. So it's got to be very intentional, and you got to be very careful that you don't waste that opportunity or do something that for someone else just for the sake of doing something that's not going to bring you joy and stop you from doing something later on down the road and just bagging it and saying, the hell with it, I'll just stay here and watch the game. So I think you just got to be careful and conscious about the choices that you make depending on the stage of life you're at. For me now, it's my choices and my friends are, mostly family and revolve around some travel and things like that. When you're younger, it's get out in the park and play.
Yeah.
And park can be defined as a club, a dance, whatever the case might be. So,
but in either case, you're mixing. See, because I love that because you're also, we talk about the 5 F's, right, and the balance, and I think last episode you brought up how if you spend more time with friends, you might have to spend less time with family. But if you can mix fun and friends or family and fun,
mm-hmm. So fitness, friends, family, fun, finance, those are the 5 F's.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you said fitness. If you're playing the right thing, you could
right.
be mixing fun, fitness, and friends or family.
Oh,
or
and
whatever.
by the way, if you're playing pickleball on a
yeah.
free court, it could be financially viable too. Like there's all we can get them all.
Yeah. So I think that's great. Yeah. Just look, put yourself in positions to succeed. Yeah. Whatever it is, travel or
and trying new things, right? Like so, pickleball became a thing where people were starting to play pickleball, and so you try that out with a group, and either you like it or you don't, or you. I think,
And it changes throughout life.
That's right.
And I think for me, I mean, it was almost exclusively sports when I was younger, right? I just that competition,
sure,
and doing it in those connections. Now, I work at home, and there's days where the only time I leave my office is to go outside and walk around and get some sunshine or putz around in the yard for a few minutes here and there. So I really look forward. Like Anthony and I have a lunch every month where I look forward to that, like that chance to interact in person and just talk.
Meetup is still a cool thing, right? Like meetup.com where you can go find different reasons to meet up, and people have all kinds of reasons they meet up. And that's a really great way to meet up on whatever subject you think you might enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think somewhere we put that recreational inventory on one of our shows. We can drop that link here too on the recreational index about like what hobbies, someone might enjoy. You just go through and check them off, like love it, don't love it, don't love it, whatever. And then, find the things you like. I like to keep a list of things on my bucket list of things I want to do one day. And so I like travel, I'll play pickleball with Charlie if he'll play, like my youngest, he's a table tennis guru. And if he's not worried about screwing up his swing, he'll play, pickleball with me. So,
yeah. So just figure it out. Like, again, if it's getting together and having lunch with somebody and you can have great, interesting conversation, that's fine. But it could also be something. I love to go to comedy shows. Almost doesn't matter who I go to a comedy show with, right? Because you're not really talking, but it's still a shared experience. Not that different than going to a movie or a concert or whatever.
I met a guy once who got a hamburger. He always had like, I don't remember what it was, lettuce, tomato, mustard, cheese, bun, and it was the exact same order every hamburger place he could find within 100 miles, so he could test them all out with exactly the same things on his hamburger, and that was his deal.
Okay. He did that with people, or he did it by himself?
He did it with people, like whoever he could get to go with him.
All right. Whatever it is, whatever your thing is.
Another guy I know takes friends to barbecue. Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So pick your own adventure, I think, is the moral of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Before we put a bow on this, anything you guys want to add to this?
I think this is an important part of the work that you have to do. I mean, nurturing and being conscious and intentional is really important.
I think
take the time to do it.
And in the hard parts, to me, what that means is calling and being the one to set things up. Like that to me has been the hard part. And I think my friends would say that's where I would, like, they'd say, hey, let's go do this. And when someone says, let's go do insert the blank, I usually am like, okay. And I have it on the calendar, like within a couple hours, yeah. I mean, so I think be the instigator. Like once you have someone that you're kind of in flight and you're like, be the instigator in a good way. Yeah, I think that's what I would say. Just be the one who plans it.
Yeah, it's easy to rationalize no.
Yeah.
I'm too busy.
Say yes.
Figure out,
yes.
put yourself in a box. Say yes, and then figure out what you have to move to make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's we've talked about this. We've talked about this on previous episodes, not in this series, but in previous episodes. That nobody on their deathbed is ever when they talk about what they regret. Their regrets are never like, I took that vacation I shouldn't have taken, or I went to that extra concert, or
I really wish I'd kept more money in my pocket and not spent it on something fun.
Yeah, right. Like those are never on people's list of regrets. Is the things they said yes to, that they went and did, the experiences and the life, and especially if it's with good friends.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, well, listeners, we will see you on the next episode of this friendship series, where we are going to talk about friendships through time and navigating it as life goes on, and distance and drifting apart, and just kind of life's journey in there. We will see you next time. But in the meantime, please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, download, tell your friends, give us feedback. We talked about feedback. We would love your feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. And you can get a bunch of free tools at our website, talesofabundance.com. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.